Hello, this is John Haller. I think I'm live, so I'm going to keep talking. If you can't hear me, let me know, and I'll try to, excuse me, and I'll redo things, but it sounds like everything's going okay. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm trying to keep this limited to a few topics. Mainly the new government in Israel that was sworn in today. I'm going to play you some clips of the setting. I'm going to play a clip of a reporter friend of mine who was there at the Knesset today, Nicole from All Israel News. I'll play a clip of some of it was like, you remember when you were in fourth grade and the teacher would leave the room and everything kind of went crazy? Except this was the Knesset with professional politicians today acting like fourth graders or second graders. And they were doing it when the teacher's in the room. It was on an order of magnitude, I think, that people really haven't seen in the Knesset. Although things get kind of heated in the Knesset. Somebody sent me a clip of about 10 years ago, a female Knesset member and a male Knesset member got into it, and the female Knesset member either threw water on him or poured water on him or something like that. So it was a pretty raucous thing. So here's let me share a screen. So this is my friend, article by my friend Nicole Jensizian. Now, I'm not sure I'm saying her name correctly. I only know her as Nicole. We were at the Knesset together when we took the tour on the Christian Media Summit 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time together that day talking. And this is her article. Netanyahu enters sixth term as prime minister at raucous ceremony on Thursday. So to give credit where credit is due, I'm going to share the video of her. Let me see how I do this. I'm going to have to stop the screen. I'm going to have to reshare it. And I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to do a Chrome tab. And this is Nicole, and I'll include the audio, and here we go. This is Nicole at the Knesset today. So let me play.
Knesset, the Parliament building, where today was the swearing in of the 37th Israeli government. So now officially, the news you've all been waiting for: Benjamin Netanyahu has returned as prime minister. He is serving now his sixth term as prime minister. So today was an extremely, I would say, raucous day in the Knesset and actually outside the Knesset. Inside the Knesset, the opposition heckled Netanyahu during his speech. Several of them were kicked out. And then the opposite happened when Yair Lapid gave his final speech as prime minister. In his speech, Netanyahu laid out three specific goals for his government, which is to prevent a nuclear Iran. He also wants to expand the Abraham Accords. Now, it was interesting because in his speech, Lapid said that if the incoming government, Netanyahu's government, continues in what his government has already laid out, that for sure Saudi Arabia will join the Abraham Accords. And that has been the goal of Netanyahu's all along, is to bring Saudi Arabia into the circle of peace treaties with Israel. But Lapid preempted that for him and said, I took credit in advance just in case it does happen. I had the opportunity to speak with several members of now the opposition, many of whom had sat in the coalition up until today, and now they go into the opposition. I had the opportunity to speak with a few of them, and they said that what they're going to do is they're going to fight any legislation that comes across that is perceived as racist or harming the rights of minorities. Also, outside the Knesset is a protest of hundreds of people who are demonstrating against what is considered Israel's most far-right government, most religious government in its history. I'm Nicole Jansizian, reporting for All Israel News.
Okay. So there you get the correct pronunciation of her name. And I'm sorry, Nicole, if you see this, we never got beyond first names. I knew what her last name was. I'm just not sure how to pronounce it. So listen, that's Nicole's report. That was a good report from the Knesset today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you a few clips. One of the clips I'm going to play for you is a clip from, I'm going to have to set it up here. Give me just a second. So had it here. Maybe it's in like Chrome. Hang on a second here. I'm still trying to get the idea of how to share everything. And I thought I had. No, that's not it. Okay, so maybe this is the. Oh, that's the reason. So I have to do a different. So this is a clip of Bibi. This is on Peter Robinson, Uncommon Knowledge from the Hoover Institution. This is a couple weeks ago. Bibi's going to sort of lay out what his goals are. So he's been talking about this for a long time. And Nicole was correct that what you're seeing now is it's very similar to what happens in American politics is that, and I apologize, I don't mean to have on here anything that's sort of praising me. But as Nicole pointed out, that Bibi has said this, that he wants to include Saudi Arabia. This has been a long time goal of his, and he's been talking about this in all of his interviews. So here he is talking a little bit about what's going on in Israeli politics. This was done 2 weeks ago on Uncommon Knowledge with Peter Robinson, and I'll just play a couple minutes of this, and he'll talk a little bit about his Saudi Arabia goal in this clip.
Unless you step out, it's not going to happen. Well, I did step out. They beat me. They formed an alternative government. Here's what happened. After the years of free market revolution, the increase in Israeli power, the peace treaties that we had, exiting COVID, first in the world, and so on, they tried another government. They had another government. And now they could compare. And once they could compare with a government that made a pact with the Muslim Brotherhood, they actually had a party that controlled the coalition, that it was beholden to the Muslim Brotherhood that wants to see the dissolution and end of the Jewish state and supports terrorists. That didn't hold. They had the comparison. They could see what happened to security. They could see what happened to the economy. They could see what happened to a lot of other things. And they decided, well, we want this guy back. Okay, but that's the voters to decide. Now, what do I want to be back for?
Yes.
3 things. Stop Iran. Have a historic end to the Arab-Israeli conflict, which I believe could be achieved if we are able to make peace with the most important Arab country, not to belittle the others who are tremendously important. But Saudi Arabia, I think, is a quantum leap compared to to everything unbelievable that we've done so now.
Peace with Egypt and Jordan since the Camp David Accords. Right. Now the Abraham Accords.
25 years, no peace, because everybody waited for the Palestinians. We didn't. Went around them. Made 4 historic peace agreements with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Morocco, and with Sudan. I want to expand that now to the remainder of the Arab countries.
And can you?
Most of them.
That looks good. You're talking to Saudi Arabia. What am I allowed to ask, and what are you allowed to say?
Well, I'm allowed to say that it's inconceivable that the historic peace agreements we made with the Gulf states would have happened without, at the very least, tacit Saudi approval. And it's a fact that before the Abraham Accords, the skies of Saudi Arabia were open to Israelis who are now flying, hundreds of thousands of them all the time, to United Arab Emirates, to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, to Bahrain, over Saudi Arabia. So I think you can glean from that.
There's an opening.
That, Saudi Arabia didn't look askance at these agreements. And so that creates, obviously, a foundation of hope. But the first goal is block Iran. The second is expand, quantum leap, the circle of peace. And the third is continue to expand Israeli know-how and innovation by additional free market reforms that will make everything that you see around you seem minuscule we can be a gigantic force in the world. I see that in 5, 6 different areas with minimal government intervention, especially by government disintervention in certain areas.
Okay. So I gotta. So that's BB. A couple of weeks ago, he was running around to a bunch of American and foreign media promoting his book, BB My Story, which is an autobiography. And it's interesting, he didn't really go to the Israeli media. Now, today at the Knesset was just, as Nicole said in her report, was best described as raucous. People were upset. I'm going to play you some extended clips that I got live from I-24 News. Now, a couple things about this that usually when the new government is sworn in and the prime minister is making his new speech, they will have dignitaries from all sorts of countries there. And it's my understanding that the gallery, where they would set aside seats for these foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, and that sort of thing, was pretty much empty. Those people did not show up. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. It appears that I went back out. So if I'm back, just sort of give me a thumbs up and let me know that I'm back. I'm not sure what happened there. Apologize for that. So I'm going to play you a clip now of the what went on at the Knesset today. Let me get some of these tabs closed down. And this is, I just want you to see a little bit what happened. So this is BB starting to talk, and you're going to kind of get a flavor of what happened here at the okay, here we go. So here's BB at the Knesset today. And
the President of the Supreme Court, Justice Esther Chayut. I don't see if David Chayut is here. Speaker of the Knesset, Amir Ohana, and his partner, Amir Haddad.
It's interesting that what's happening is there's a lot of protests, particularly by the LGBT community in Tel Aviv and that type of thing. They were blocking some streets and protesting this government. And then, as Nicole said, that they were protesting outside the parliament. And a lot of it is, this is going to be an anti-LGBT government. But the Speaker of the Knesset from the Likud party is LGBT, is a gay man who was there with his partner that Netanyahu had just recognized. So what they're doing is they're trying to create a narrative that this is an extremist, racist government. It's the same thing that's happening here in the United States with anybody who's conservative. So here's a little bit more about watch what happens.
Knesset members, and especially my good friends, the heads of the factions of the new coalition who have worked so well in cooperation with us, ministers of the designated government, my fellow citizens. The new government is setting out on its journey today in the middle of Israel's 75th year. This is an important milestone.
קריאה ראשונה, חבר הכנסת שירי. רוצה שנצא? אני רוצה שתהיו בשקט. מה כבר ביקשתי? שתהיו בשקט כשהזמן שלי נועם? נאור שירי, קריאה שנייה.
Yo, are you still trying to lose weight with exercise alone? Guys, it ain't going to happen without the right diet. That's why there's Nutrisystem for Men. They deliver the right foods with the right nutrition right to you, including protein-packed shakes to fight hunger and new premium meals portioned for men. So stop sweating your hardcore workouts.
Well, now you're getting this is what hang on a second here. There we go. So I have to play those in a Chrome tab, and Chrome does not block the ads like a Brave tab will, and I haven't been able to get the Brave tab to work. But you kind of get an idea of what's going on here. So let's go back. Here's a little bit of Netanyahu's speech at the Knesset. Let's see.
Before they are forcibly ejected. The new government is setting out on its journey today in the middle of Israel's 75th year. In the first 25 years of the state, the foundations were set in all areas. We absorbed a huge amount of immigration, and we fought difficult wars forced upon us by our enemies. In the next 25 years, we saw a foundational and pivotal political upheaval, and we signed peace agreements with previous enemies. In the next 25 years, we accelerated the transition to a free economy, and I am proud of the privilege I had to lead reforms in this area. We made Israel a technological and innovational powerhouse, and we signed 4 historic peace agreements with Arab countries. We now look forward to the next 25 years, which will bring us to Israel's centenary. In the next 4 years, we will work so that when we celebrate Israel's 100th anniversary, Israel will be a world powerhouse that flourishes and is strong, whose existence will no longer be cast in doubt. For that reason, we must carry out 3 important tasks. The first, to frustrate Iran's ability to develop a nuclear arsenal that will threaten us and the entire world.
חברי הכנסת, בבקשה.
Just another minute, and I'll turn this off. There's just one thing I want you to hear. Prime
Thinking
Minister
about going
Netanyahu
solar,
say.
but not sure whether it's
Ridiculous.
The opposition members are calling out weak in unison.
So you can see the ridiculous nature of this is that, Netanyahu has stood pretty strong. Israel's become a military power. He's been essentially the prime minister for the last 16 years, except for a year or so out for the Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, who've been in power for the last, I guess, year since early 2021. So for almost all of the last 16 years, he's been the prime minister, and Israel's risen from a relatively insignificant power to, I think, now considered to be the 8th or 9th most powerful military on the planet. So it's just absolutely ludicrous. I have one more clip here. I actually have two little clips. So let me go to this one and play that.
To say a few words that come from the heart. This is the 6th time. This is the 6th time.
So let's move forward a little bit here. Let's see, 1 minute or 1 hour. This just goes on and on and on. It's ridiculous.
To you, the 37th Israeli government in alphabetical order. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Minister of Jerusalem Heritage will be the Minister of Heritage, and Rabbi Amichai Eliyahu will be the Minister. The Minister of Technology and Innovation and Science, Ophir
He's now
Okonet.
introducing the cabinet. I want you just to see part of this.
Minister in the Education Ministry. Minister of National Security.
חבר הכנסת מיקי לוי, כיושב ראש לשעבר, אתה בטח יודע שלא דופקים פה על השולחנות.
שר במשרד הרווחה.
איתמר בן גביר.
קריאה שלישית, נא להוציא אותו.
Minister in the...
This guy's going to get drug out. As you can see, everything is peace, love, and harmony in the Israeli Knesset right now. It's just absolutely ludicrous what's happening. So that was a little bit flavor of it. So a little bit after the speech, of course, Netanyahu, just to repeat what he'd already said, that his goals were to stop Iran and to make peace with Saudi Arabia, which is a pretty significant thing. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. And they and then Yair Lapid got up and said, well, the only reason you're going to be able to make peace with Saudi Arabia is because all the things that we did in the last year when we were in power, which, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what it was. And so, Bibi handled it, I think, very well. But it's just like our country, the United States. It's just like almost every country in Europe. It's just like Russia. There's a lot of, everything is divided. Everything is very divided in governments everywhere. And so I think there's a close parallel between what's going on in Israel and what's going on in the United States. And this is the way it's going to be. I think, I don't know that this is ever going to change. So just wait until, for example, in the United States, the Republicans start holding hearings on things that they don't want the Democrats to, they don't want investigated, and the Republicans have control of Congress, we think. It's always going to be up in the air, but they're going to do investigations. They're going to do subpoenas and that type of thing. And I'm just telling you is you haven't seen anything yet. Anything that you think you've seen gone on, just wait. And I mean, I would encourage you someday, get up early in the morning, turn on MSNBC with Morning Joe, and you'll get a flavor for people who live in a completely different universe than the one that I appear to live in every day. So this is, but Israeli politics, you haven't seen it yet. And they've said, Nicole talked to a number of people in her article, in her article, she talks about the fact that they have, all of these. I mean, they're just going to fight everything. And so what Lapid has been doing is he's been tweeting and that sort of thing, saying this is the end of democracy. And that's, wait a minute, we just had an election where everybody got to vote. There was nobody that was denied the right to vote. We had an election and the people spoke, and now I'm in power. And you're saying it's the end of democracy. And he said in his speech, it's not the end of democracy. This is how democracy works. And you just don't like it. You're just not in power anymore. But they're not going to go away silently. I mean, former heads of the IDF, people in the government with Lapid and others, they're running around saying this is the end of democracy, this is the end of the country, everything's going to fall apart. Now, I also have another article. I don't think I'm going to play the clip. I'll probably play it Sunday. This is Prime Minister, the King of Jordan, talking about red lines in Jerusalem as Netanyahu returns to office. And I think, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to play a little bit of a clip of him because I think it's important what he says, because he, has always considered himself, I'm the custodian of the holy sites of Jerusalem, and we're not going to, well, here's the clip. Now I've got to stop this screen just because it's, excuse me. Okay. Here he is. Here's Abdullah.
As we close out 2022, we're here to discuss the challenges facing this region, not least his concerns about the region's shrinking Christian population, and why he believes plans to develop and protect this holy site are critical for the community's future in the Middle East.
By the way, the holy site that Abdullah is trying to develop is the Bethany beyond Jordan, traditional site of the baptism of Jesus. So they're trying to develop that in Jordan.
Absolute pleasure to have you. I want to talk about why we're here and the significance of this site, but I do want to start with your speech at the UNGA this year, because I think it's very pertinent to what we are going to discuss. You began your address by saying there are alarm bells.
Numerous crises batter our world, crises that are increasingly interlocked. Regional conflicts with international impact. Today, the future of Jerusalem is an urgent concern. The city is holy to billions of Muslims, Christians, and Jews around the world. Undermining Jerusalem's legal and historical status quo triggers global tensions and deepens religious divides. The holy city must not be a place for hatred and division.
Can you just reflect on 2022?
Jerusalem, we've always believed, is a city that should bring us all together. But unfortunately, it's used by extremists on all sides to create conflict and violence. And the violence really did pick up in the spring. We are the custodians of both the Christian and Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. My concern is that there are challenges that the churches are facing from policies on the ground. If we continue to use Jerusalem as a soapbox for politics, things can get out of control really, really quickly.
You described Christianity in Jerusalem as under fire. Can you just explain a little further?
We are fortunate in this country and in Jerusalem to have the oldest Arab Christian community in the world. They've been here for 2,000 years. Over the past several years, we're seeing that they have become under pressure as a community. So the numbers are dropping, which is, I think, an alarm bell to all of us.
2022 has turned out to be the deadliest year for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 2 decades. And Jerusalem is a major flashpoint.
There are fears of a third intifada possibly on the horizon. How concerned are you about that prospect?
We have to be concerned about a next intifada. And if that happens, that's a complete breakdown of law and order, and one that neither the Israelis or the Palestinians will benefit from. And I think there is a lot of concern from all.
So I'll probably play more of that on Sunday. So listen, this is a very volatile time in Israel. There are a number of things going on, and I'm trying to keep this relatively brief tonight. Talk more about some of these things on Sunday. Understand that there's it's hard to grasp the significance of a lot of the things that we're seeing going on right now. It's just it's pretty amazing. So let me, for example, here's this is from Israel National News. This is an article, agreement with Smotrich's government to expand the Jewish presence in Hebron. So, look, I was just in Hebron a little while ago. In that, as you can see, the picture behind me is the tomb of the cave of the tomb of the patriarchs, cave of Machpelah in Hebron. You can see in this picture, Hebron is the most divided city in Israel, and so the new coalition government wants to expand the presence of Jews in Hebron. The official spokesperson of the community of Hebron is Yishai Fleischer, who I was at his home for Shabbat dinner 2 weeks ago tomorrow. Very interesting time as we talked about some of these issues. And as Brian Schrager and I drove around Hebron 2 weeks ago tomorrow, we saw soldiers all over the place. That's probably the most divided city in Israel. About 800 to 1,000 Jews live among a couple 100,000 Arabs. And in terms of where a lot of the terrorists come from, Hebron is one area, Nablus in the north, up near where the ancient city of Shechem is, and Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. That's another one. There's also a city called Jenin, which is up in the northeastern part of Israel, sort of up towards the area of Nazareth. And these are very hot flashpoints. And so when we were there 2 weeks ago, Friday, I've been to Hebron before a couple times, and I'm just saying there was an incredible amount of soldiers, armored vehicles. The soldiers had their guns ready. I know what the trigger is on a gun. They had their fingers by the triggers. And as you're driving around, this is because we also had a briefing down in Gaza 2 days before on Tuesday with an Israeli general, and they showed us an example of what they use to train IDF soldiers. You see a vehicle coming, you have 8 seconds. You have 8 seconds to think through about 15 things and analyze, okay, now what's going to happen if I actually do something? So you can see the soldiers going through that decision tree as you're driving around. And you need to understand about this is the way they live. I talked on David Fiorazo and Stand for the Truth yesterday. Just let me sort of recap that. So Tuesday at the Christian Media Summit, we went down to Gaza. We went to the IDF Urban Warfare Training Center, located in the south. It's very interesting. The landscape reminds you very much of California, and there's agricultural fields all over the place. I mean, there's just an incredible amount of agriculture down there. There's not a lot of cities or anything. Then so we had a training briefing with one of the generals from the IDF. Then we went over to the Urban Warfare Training Center, and then we went to another place. He said, I'll show you what it's like. And he drove a tank up and he sprayed sand all over us. I was cleaning the sand out of my ears for a couple years. Then we went over to a kibbutz. And I don't remember if I shared about this Sunday. So if I talked about it, I'm going to talk about it again. I talked about it in the radio program I did with David Fiorazo yesterday. We went to a kibbutz, and the kibbutz literally is where we were sitting was a mile from the Gaza fence. The lady talked about the fact that where we live, she said she described it as 95% heaven and 95% heaven, 5% hell. She said that when the things go off, let me see if I can get you a Google Maps thing. Excuse me 1 second. To give you an idea of where we were. So we were down on the Gaza border. You can see the Gaza border. We were somewhere in this area, and we were literally a mile, maybe less than a mile from the Gaza fence. We saw a place in the kibbutz where a rocket had landed, killed 2 men. It hit another man. He lost both of his legs. We later in that, after that meeting, we went up to Eshkol. It's called, I'm not sure if I see it right here. Oh, here we go. Eshkol Regional Council. So we were down in this area, if I recall correctly, on the Gaza fence. And then we went up to Eshkol to their community center. We had this unbelievable dinner. They just kept bringing massive amounts of food out to us. So much so that the next morning, nobody showed up for breakfast at the media summit. But the mayor of the Eshkol Regional Council now is the guy who lost both of his legs. And he came and talked to us. And the people there, so down here they say 95% heaven, because when the rockets go off, our red alert app goes off, we have 5 seconds, or I'm sorry, 10 seconds to get to a safe room. And she showed us some videos that she had made during some of the rocket attacks in 2021, when there was they were launching a lot of rockets. And she showed what it's like. And she says, sometimes I'm not where I can even hear the air raid sirens. I have to have an app in my pocket. And when my phone buzzes, I start running to my safe room. And I have 10 seconds to make it. Now, when you go up to Eshkol, they said, oh, well, it's not as bad up here. It's 99% heaven here because we have 15 seconds to get to our safe room. And then when we went to my friend's house who live in, let's see, where do they live? They live on Route 60. I'm looking for Jerusalem here. There it is. They live in Efrat. And if you remember a couple of years ago, there was a guy named Ari Fold who was stabbed to death at a shopping center at Gush Etzion. That was like a mile from where we had Shabbat dinner 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, this is what these people live with. I mean, Ari Fold, bigger than life guy. I had a lot of respect for him. He was bold. He was loud. He could be obnoxious, but he was a committed Zionist. He believed in the Zionist enterprise, that Israel, the people of Israel, the Jews should be back in their land, and they should be able to build in their land. They should be able to live in their land, that this is the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. They believe this. And when they're here in Efrat, now, if you look here, here's Efrat right here. You can see it. And then you go up here. This is Bethlehem. In Efrat, if you remember, actually the technical name for that area there is Ephrata, which means sort of the region of Bethlehem. Well, what was it said that these people are now living in building up in the area of Ephrata? This is what was talked about in Micah. O Bethlehem, Ephrata, you're the least of the cities of Judea, and out of you will come the Messiah. So they understand this, and this drives them in the way that they live. So it's a very interesting place to be. So understand that this Zionist enterprise, the world hates this. I will talk more about it Sunday, but there have been a number of articles this week. It came out. I don't think I have anything prepared on that yet. So what is happening, though, is that in the EU, it has been known for a long time that in the area of the West Bank, which you can see here on this map, you see this outline here, that this is Judea. This is biblical Judea. They call it the West Bank. Up here is Samaria. In fact, there's a city called Samaria up here near Nablus. That's where you can go see where King Ahab and his father Omri are buried there in the royal palace section at the Tel at Samaria. I've seen it myself. So they call this the West Bank, but this is the biblical heartland. Understand that as you drive up This Route 60 here, you see here Shiloh. This is where the tabernacle stood for about 400 years after the conquest. This is the biblical heartland. And unfortunately, a lot of tours don't hit this area. They kind of go up the coast and they go down the valley. And most people don't get into this biblical heartland area, Shiloh, Nablus, Shechem, Hebron, that type of thing. Some people might go to Beersheba because it's outside the West Bank region, and also the areas Lachish and some of those other areas. But the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, a lot of people just don't go to. And I personally think it's a scandal. I would like to see that change. And so there are people building. So when you look at a Efrat here is what they would call the green line, this dotted line. You start here at Jerusalem, you see this dotted line, and then you see Efrat here, and you see Hebron. Hebron is where the tomb of the patriarchs is. It's the second holiest site in Judaism. For 700 years, the Jews were not allowed to go into the structure that was there. That changed in 1967. And so now what the new government wants to do with the conservative religious people involved, particularly people like Ben-Gvir, who lives in Hebron, they want to expand the Jewish presence in Hebron. It is one of the most divided cities that you can imagine. I don't know if I have a, let's see, I think I had a picture of this. Usually by this time of the week, I have like 8,000 pictures of different areas. Well, I don't have it handy. So I'll just talk a little bit about it. They want to, so they're building an Efrat, and and what Netanyahu is proposing to do, and this is sort of a little bit further information on what he spoke about in his speech today, is he's talking about normalizing settlements. But this is a huge international flashpoint. So the other day, leaked to the press was a 6-page European Union document. What has been going on, so everybody in the world gets upset when Jews actually build in Judea, where they're from, their biblical homeland, where they have restored the language that they spoke 3,000 years ago, where they are living on the land, Efrat, where the Messiah would come from, Bethlehem, where David was from, Hebron, where Abraham actually bought the field of Machpelah as a place to bury him and Isaac and Jacob. So they're building there, and the world goes crazy. But what we're finding is that the Palestinians are not supposed to build there. These people called the Palestinians. They are, but the EU is funding building in Area C. And this is very problematic. This is not, I think it's a violation of international law. And so they're doing this. It's terrible. But now we have EU documentation from the European Union where they're actually funding the construction of Palestinian buildings and things, illegal Palestinian buildings. So you will see news stories that says, oh, look at what the nasty Israelis did. They destroyed this Palestinian village. Well, that wasn't supposed to be built, and it's being funded by the EU directly. And now there was a 6-page document leaked to the press just within the last week that documents this. This proves that what Israel has been claiming has been going on is actually going on. So what Bibi wants to do, Netanyahu wants to do, is he wants to get the situation resolved, and he's going to he wants to enter into a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia has made it clear that we're not going to agree to this peace agreement uh, until you resolve the Palestinian issue. So what was floated, I'll just recap this. I think this is one of the most important stories of the year. So back in June, the Wall Street Journal, of all people, they had on their Section C in their Saturday weekend edition, where they do, 2 or 3 pages on an important issue. That issue was devoted to the Jordanian option, they called it. About a month later, in one of the Arab newspapers, this proposal called the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine showed up. And when you look at the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine, it bears a lot of resemblance to the map from the Trump Vision for Peace that was released in about 2 years ago in January, or I guess 3 years ago, in January of 2020. The proposal is that it will really be a two-state solution. It will be Jordan having some control over the Palestinian areas west of the Jordan River. It will be, but it will be 2 states. This is what was originally proposed in the San Remo Agreement back in 1920, actually agreed to by the international community in 1922. There's a French lawyer who's done extensive work on this and writing on this, that they agreed to a 2-state solution. West of the Jordan River, that was Israel. East of the Jordan River, that was to be Jordan, Transjordan, the home for the Palestinian Arabs. But when Israel declared independence in 1948, immediately started a war, and Jordan came and took over this area that became known as the West Bank. They barred Jews from the city of Jerusalem. They destroyed sites in the old city of Jerusalem. So that's why when you go to the old city today, you will see new construction in the Jewish quarter. That's because the Jordanians destroyed it. A little bit north of Jerusalem, here at if you go up Highway 60, it's, you can see that it's not, this is, let me get there we go. This is a little bit better. Okay, so here's Jerusalem. Here is, here's Ramallah right here. Beitel, that's Bethel. The ancient city of Bethel. Ai is up in this area. And you go up, when you go out of Jerusalem, you'll go by this place called Gibeah. It's on one of the highest places, and that's an unfinished palace of the Palestinian king at the time, Hussein. And it's built, though, on the tribal homeland of Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, which was later, if I recall correctly, was absorbed into the tribe of Judah. But this is the tribal homeland of Benjamin, which was the tribe from which the first king of Israel came, Saul. And it was done to make a point. I'm building on your first king's birthplace. But when the 67 war happened, that building's just stopped being built. And you see the still superstructure. You can see it there to this day. So this is a very hot flashpoint. And Saudi Arabia has said, unless you can resolve the Palestinian issue, it's not going to be done. Well, through a guy connected to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's now the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, there was this proposal floated. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but everybody talks about this peace and, the division of the land. And we know that there's a judgment visited upon the nations because he brings them down the valley of the Jehoshaphat because you have divided my land. And so we know that this division of land is going to continue until the Lord returns. So anyway, very significant things happening. We know the EU is messing around in this. We know they're funding Palestinian construction. And then there's the narrative. Oh, look at those Israelis. They're building in the Palestinian lands. This is nonsense. The San Remo Agreement 100 years ago, this year, agreed to by the international community, is the only international agreement. And that was 2 states, a state of Transjordan, east of the Jordan River, Israel west of the Jordan River. Now we have this problem. And so when they talk about a two-state solution, like the when they talk about a two-state solution, they're really like the Biden administration. They're not talking about a two-state solution. They're talking about a three-state solution. Jordan, a Palestinian state in the West Bank area, and maybe Gaza, a fourth state, and then Israel. The true two-state solution would be Israel west of the Jordan, Jordan east of the Jordan. Bibi is practical, and he's talking about, well, maybe he's pushing this, and he's talking about, well, we'll normalize the settlements, but we'll enter into some kind of, as long as we have security control over the area west of the Jordan River, and it would be political suicide, geographic suicide, national suicide to give up the Jordan River Valley and the High Line here. It would be insane. So there is a proposal, and it appears that from what Bibi has said, from what Lapid has said, that there seems to be some push to get this agreement in place as part of the Arab Accords, Abraham Accords, excuse me. So I think this is incredibly significant prophetically, and you just need to be aware of this. So there's one other thing. There's been a number of articles this week. Let me just pull up one. This is something that I was able to experience. And hang on a second here. I didn't apologize for not. Let's see. Okay. It always cracks me up the way these articles get written. I don't know who does these things. Here's an article from Israeli National News, or the Times of Israel. You see this: Israel right-wing group to fully excavate biblical pool of Siloam in East Jerusalem. I'm going to talk about this a little bit on Sunday. I think this is one of the most significant stories. Here's a sort of a picture. Let's see if I can get this blown up. Hang on a second here. Not the best picture, but so here is a picture. You see the Temple Mount here. You see the Pool of Siloam. I was standing there just 2 weeks ago yesterday as they're excavating, and they're talking about, there's just a little section of it excavated now, but then there's this processional road, and the goal is to open this processional road. There were shops along this. There's some videos that have been done that are sort of recreating what it looked like at the time. I'll share those on Sunday. It's an incredible place, and there were millions of pilgrims that went from the Pool of Siloam, believed to be like a large mikvah ritual bath. They would bathe there, then they would walk up the processional road. It's about from the Pool of Siloam up to the Temple Mount entrance at the time of Herod. It's about 800 meters, so it's under half a mile. But the elevation change is about 500 feet. So it goes up. It's pretty steep. It's paved with flagstones. Josephus writes about this in his historical account of the Jewish wars and talked about a drainage channel, and they've discovered the drainage channel underneath there. I think I shared a story about that last Sunday, that this is where the last Jews were hiding out, where the Romans broke through into the drainage channel and slaughtered them. And as our guide said, this is where Jerusalem ended in 70 AD. But now we are back. I mean, it's hard to grasp until you stand there and you can feel the place around you, the emotion, that the prophetic significance of this. This is what the prophets talked about, the restoration to the land, Ezekiel chapter 36, other passages. I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you back when you don't deserve it. Okay. I sent you to the nations, and when you went into the nations, you profaned my holy name, Ezekiel 36. But my holy name, I'm going to bring you back because my holy name is at stake. And I said I would bring you back. And they are back. They continue to come back. Another thing I'll talk about Sunday, I'm going to do sort of a recap of some of the important stories. But what we see is this rise of anti-Semitism in the world. It's really getting out of control. And I'm concerned that people in the Republican Party who should know better are participating in it or allowing it to happen, or they're not coming out and condemning it. And I think you know who I'm talking about this with the Kanye West thing. I'm very troubled by it. And I can tell you that in Israel, the conservative, Zionist, Orthodox Jewish community, that is the settlers, they're done with our former president. They're moving on to somebody else because they feel like they've been punched in the gut because he's not condemned this Kanye West, Nick Fuentes thing. And I have to say, I agree with them. This is not acceptable. Something people need to speak up about this. So anyway, so here's so I'm going to stop. I've talked enough. Unless you have some pertinent questions related to what I talked about, I'll talk for just a couple more minutes. I'll tell you what's going to happen. So yesterday, 2 days ago, I did Stand Up for the Truth with David Fiorazzo. Q90 FM, go to standupforthetruth.com. You can listen to that program if you want. Sunday, I'm going to do a year update. I'm going to try to hit 5 or 6 of the top stories and bring in some clips and that type of thing to kind of remind you what happened in 2022 that I think is going to continue in 2023. I may have a little bit of preview of 2023. I joined, not a paid member, but I'm a member of the World Economic Forum website, so I can track things that are going there. And the Davos thing is coming up in about 16, 17 days. So there'll be a lot to talk about there. They're going to do more of the same. Larry, I'm looking at the board of directors of Davos, of the World Economic Forum. You've got Larry Fink from BlackRock, who's pushing this ESG nonsense, which Saudi Arabia and Russia are also pushing. That's disrupting energy supplies and that type of thing all over the world. I'll play a clip of Antonio Guterres from April 4th of last year, where they introduced one of these climate change reports, and he talked about the end of the world if we don't do everything, if we don't go to renewables. Well, listen, it's okay to have renewables, but they don't work all the time. And they don't work all the time. People are going to ask the people in Buffalo, do you want to have a thing based on solar? How's that going to work for you in the winter? And what do they have? Dozens of people who passed away in this last storm because people are shifting to renewables. So on the board of directors, so you have Larry Fink, who's pushing that. Also, Christina Freeland, who is the Deputy Prime Minister and I believe the Minister of Finance in the Canadian government. We'll talk about that. I also have a document that I received that is just let's see if I can find it here. I'm going to open it up. Excuse me 1 second here while I move it over to the other page. I want you to look at this. This is put out by the Canadian government, people. It is the Medical Assistance in Dying Activity Book. Welcome. These activities will help you think about a medical assistance in dying by someone in your life. This is a workbook for children. This is what the Canadian government is doing. They are talking to children about assisted suicide, medical assistance in dying. Who can do it? Well, you have to be at least 18 years of old, but there's also provisions that some of the medical community in Canada is talking about. Well, maybe the kid can't really make a decision and the parents can't make a decision, so we'll make a decision for them. This is just sick. I don't, this is a workbook for kids. It's unbelievable. As they take them through, this is evil on steroids. And I agree with somebody who says this in the comments, the world is nuts. And I think that that's probably an understatement at this time. But anyway, so we'll talk about this. We'll talk about the Hash My Kingdom. We'll talk about the important stories of the year. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to do at 5 o'clock Eastern, I'm going to do an hour or so with Tom Hughes on Hope for Our Times. And I've got some other things coming up. I'll keep you posted on that. But so Sunday, January 1st, we'll start off 2023 with a look back at 2022 and some of the things that are going on. And listen, I'll just leave it at this. We're entering a time where I don't know when we get out of here. None of us knows. Okay. And I could die before the Lord returns. So I agree that that's a possibility. So we don't know our exit date. Let's put it that. Nobody knows their exit date. Even somebody 95 years old doesn't know their exit date. And I think we're in a period of time where we're going to have our faith tested by what's going on, because I just don't see any return to any semblance of normal. The world is falling apart demographically. It's falling apart spiritually. I will probably play a clip of a subject that I return to with some regularity on Sunday. I've been watching one of his recent sermon series. That's Andy Stanley. I did a talk in England back in 2018. And one of my talks there was, I don't know if it ended up on the YouTube with the title, but it was called The Silence of the Shepherds. The things that are going on, and the subject of that was Andy Stanley. We'll talk a little bit, update that a little bit on Sunday too. So hopefully on Sunday we won't be like 8 hours that I think we could be if we really went into in depth on anything. But I'll just pick 5, 6, 7 topics that are coming up. I know we'll talk about central bank digital currencies, Davos, Yuval Harari, some of the things he said, Neuralink, some of the things that happened there. And some of that came up at the Christian Media Summit with the business guys. And it was done in such a way that it was like, made me want it. It almost knocked me off my chair when I heard it, because it was the same thing I heard in Neuralink, was the same thing I heard with the business guy there. And it has huge implications. And we'll talk about that Sunday. So anyway, I'm going to sign off now, and God bless. Have a good evening. And I would be remiss living in the Columbus, Ohio area if I didn't say, go Bucks, beat those evil Georgia dogs. So anyway, God bless. Talk to you Sunday.